to the Kennedy Center Performing Arts Series. My name is Caleen Sinnette Jennings, Professor of Theater at American University. Today's program was previously recorded, and while you won't have an opportunity to call in, you can send questions to us at any time by using the email address appearing on your screen. I'm joined today by members of the cast of Mame, which has had a wonderfully successful revival at the Kennedy Center. The musical, with songs by renowned composer Jerry Herman, tells the story of Mame Dennis, a fun-loving, wealthy eccentric with a flair for life and a razor-sharp wit. Her life is suddenly changed when she becomes the guardian of her late brother's only child, Patrick. Mame begins in the Roaring '20s and continues through the Great Depression. Through all the ups and downs, Mame manages to keep everything under control with some help from her dearest friend Vera and her companions Agnes and Ito. Harriet Harris plays Vera Charles. She is a Juilliard School graduate and spent 3 years with the acting company before she began her successful Broadway and off-Broadway career, including appearing as the sole female in the original cast of Jeffrey, Paul Rudnick's play about love in the time of AIDS. She's also had a successful television career with roles on 6 Feet Under, Frasier, and Desperate Housewives. She's the recipient of a Tony Award and a Drama Desk Award. Harrison Chad plays young Patrick Dennis. He's not yet 14, but has had a number of acting credits, including voiceover roles for Dora the Explorer, Charlotte's Web 2, and the title role in Disney's Tarzan 2. Alan Muraoka plays Ito. He's had extensive background in musical theater, including roles in the Broadway productions of Pacific Overtures, Miss Saigon, and The King and I. He might be best known to the students for his recurring role on Sesame Street, which he's played for the past 9 years. Parker Esse is the assistant choreographer and a dancer in the ensemble. He's a Helen Hayes Award nominee, and his recent credits include dance captain for Arena Stage's production of Damn Yankees, and performing and assisting theater legend Bjork Lee in Arena Stage's Camelot. He's danced with Ben Vereen, Bebe Neuwirth, and Anne Reinking on Broadway in Fosse. Let's get started. What message do you think that the creators of Mame want to get across to the audience? What do they want to leave us thinking about?
We've been just talking about that. We think it's live, live, live. It's one of Mame's lines, and it's really just embrace life. Don't do things in half measures. And really, one of her lines is "Life is a banquet," and it really is that. It's just don't have one of those little instant cup of noodles and be satisfied with that. There's so much out there. Not to live your father's life unless that's the life you choose.
Yes.
But find out what else there is.
Yes.
Yeah, take everything in. You know, when Patrick comes into the show, she exposes him to the city of New York and everything out there that's, that he can learn from. And he learns about the arts. He learns about just everything in life. Mm-hmm. And that's a recurring message throughout.
Absolutely, and that if you live your life sort of stifled and bottled, that you will end up with regrets. And and she's a woman who doesn't have regrets, that because she tries everything, even if it fails, at least she goes down fighting and she's trying. And
go for it all.
Yeah.
Go for it all.
Yeah.
Great. How did you get your roles? Did you audition, and what was that process like for each of you?
Well, I wouldn't have been cast if I had to audition. I would never be cast in a musical if I had to audition.
Why do you say that?
Because I really have specific skills, and you have to overlook the things that I can't do, and then sort of steer the audience's eye away from the things I don't do so well. And so that I was offered the part,
Okay.
and that I happily accepted. I just thought it would be a lot of fun.
Okay. Okay.
And I went through an audition process. I got my call through my agent, and
Yes.
When I got the audition, I thought, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do Ito in a way that would be satisfying to me and to 21st century audiences? Because the portrayal in the 1958 movie, which most people are most aware of, the Rosalind Russell movie, was a portrayal that would not be politically correct for today's audiences. And so I had to try to maneuver my way through that and figure out a way to still make it comic and yet something that I would be proud to be a part of. And so I sort of brought that into the audition, and I think they got it. And yeah, I had one audition, and I got the call.
So you took the risk that your interpretation was something that you could bring to the audition.
Absolutely.
And that's wonderful.
Well, and it's also that I thought that if they weren't open to the interpretation, that this probably wasn't a production that I wanted to be a part of.
Yes.
But they were definitely open to it, and were actually, I think, looking for a different take on it.
Yes.
And sort of my take on it was something that they sort of glommed onto and were accepting of. And
Sure, sure. And what about you, Parker?
I went to a dance audition. It was invited, so it was through my agent. And the first time I heard about the audition, I couldn't actually do the job because I was already committed to another production. And when the show was postponed, it all lined up. And Warren Carlisle, the choreographer, had an assistant who ended up having a conflict and took another job, so I ended up being his assistant. And that I found out 2 weeks after the audition. And
Isn't that
that's how I got involved.
Wow, wow.
I basically just went through the same process as Alan. I auditioned for the show, and they called me, and they said, would you like to do it? And I just jumped on the bandwagon. And
Terrific.
I love it here.
Terrific.
And I guess we should explain, when Parker was saying that the show was postponed, that we were supposed to do it, I believe, in January or February. We
Right,
start rehearsals,
right,
and then originally, and then I think somebody wasn't available,
Had a
so we
conflict.
had a conflict, so we had to move it to these dates, to the May through July dates.
I see.
And luckily, and some people, we lost some people because of that, and and we gained some people.
So it sounds like it's a combination of preparation and luck.
Absolutely. Welcome to showbiz.
Everything is that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this is a great opportunity for a question that's been on my mind. Since there are a lot of reality television shows on now about auditioning and competing for roles and so forth, what do the four of you feel about the image that this portrays about show business and auditioning? Do you think it's helping or harming in terms of the image that's created?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, I'll talk about American Idol, maybe.
Okay.
And what they choose to broadcast is generally the worst and some of the best. And I think they do that for publicity. It's not truly accurate to auditions as a whole, because
Okay.
there's a lot of middle ground that's not, covered of fantastic performers. And in musical theater, when you go to an audition for a show like Mame, you, like we had appointments, we had agents that sent us to these auditions. So you have a specific group of people that have been working professionally, and it's a different level than
Yes.
what the TV,
Well, and I
programs
think-
go for.
Absolutely,
Yes.
and I think that the whole idea of American Idol, that it seems like, this could be somebody next door who could be the next star with overnight, without showing the preparation that is involved with that, which is, I know a lot of the people who are trained talented singers on that show
Yes.
have trained for years.
Yes.
And it's not something that they just woke up one day and could do. And I think that reality television tries to give the impression that that is the case.
Yes.
Whereas they don't, like I know the first season of American Idol, there was somebody on that was a Broadway performer.
Yes.
And and I think they try to sort of squelch that because of that, that idea that anybody can be a star.
Yes.
But the reality of the reality is that everyone has to prepare for that.
Sure, sure, sure. Some thoughts on this wave of reality shows and how they portray auditioning and
I really haven't watched any of
Okay.
them, but the idea that everybody has a talent for something, no, some people have a talent for something else.
Yes.
But I do think that from what Alan was saying, it sounds like, it's fun to go to a karaoke bar, it's fun to stand up and have Barbra Streisand's backup, but you're
Yes.
still not going to sound like Barbra Streisand.
Right.
But people, it's just not possible. But that person maybe is a wonderful nurse. That person is, is invaluable, you know, in teacher or whatever their job is that they have a talent for. But not everybody, you know, not everybody can do everything.
Sure.
So, and I think these shows, from what I understand, tend to, like Alan said, make you think, oh, anybody can be a star. Well, not even trained professionals. You know, it's like what you said before about luck and preparation lining up. It's not.
Sure.
And also, the audition process really isn't as harsh as they show it to be.
Yes.
Because when they have those 3 judges, like, criticizing the people, they don't have that in auditions. And it's always, like, if you don't get something, you just forget it and you go on to the next audition. In American Idol, you don't get it, then you're off the show and it's, like, over for you.
Right.
It's really...
Yes.
Well, and it's one little encapsulated moment in time. Whereas I believe that each of us probably has had a bad audition. And if that was captured on film and that was sort of the sort of representation of who we are, I think it would be quite damaging to us. But the reality is sometimes you're more suited for some things than other things. And so, you know, you just have to sort of take that. And reality television has the tendency to attach itself on sort of like a moment and stick with that moment. And that's sort of what you're branded as for, you know, through the entire run. And I think that's an unfair assumption and representation of the reality.
I got you. Thanks. Thanks. Harriet, could you talk a little bit about the differences between performing for television and performing for live musical theater? I mean, you've had a wonderfully successful, you still have a wonderfully successful television career, but you said when you got that call, you said, yes, I'd do it happily.
Oh, it's very different. It's funny to have an occupation where you actually get to change completely and still remain an actor. You know, most doctors specialize in one thing and they don't go into something else later. So it really is, it's like the great big toolbox, and you're not going to use the same tools all the time, but that's in your kit. So this is it's a wonderful thing to get to do this. And I grew up listening to musicals and going to see them and thinking that I would someday get to do it, because I wanted to be an actor from a very early age. And then at some point in the, oh gee, you really can't sing or dance, so you should concentrate on something else. So it's very peculiar that this would be happening at this point in my life. And when somebody asks me to do it, it's a wonderfully thrilling environment. You know, to have the orchestra, to have the music, to have people bursting into song, and to have people expressing things through dance. It is a thrilling thing to be around. And that I can contribute in a certain way to that, you know, to that microcosm is very exciting. And it is a different thing than working with the camera. And in television, you're always trying to satisfy what the producer's idea is. And on stage, you get to really bring more of your ideas, because they can filter those ideas out over time. And they'll get back to what, you know, or it'll help them define what you want to do. But you have weeks and weeks to do this. TV, you have a day. So they're interested in getting their idea on, because they've been working on it for weeks, and then you show up that day. So it is much more of a controlled environment. And film too, usually, you know, if it's a scene in a movie, depending on how high the budget is, you have maybe the whole day to shoot that scene, and so you do get to experiment, and you get to do different takes and stuff. So that's a little more tactile. But if you're, you know, you get to really feel like you're contributing. But in TV, you're pretty much cast as they need you, and you don't build the performance. You're the right tool for them. So it's you know,
different.
They're all fun, and they're all interesting to try to satisfy the demands of it. But I have hardly ever gotten to do musicals, so it's still very exciting and new.
Sure. Parker, you were talking a little bit earlier about the various roles that you play in terms of making sure that the show stays as its creator wants it to stay. Can you talk a little bit about the things that you do as assistant choreographer and assistant to Ms. Baranski?
Sure. Well, in pre-production, before the show went into rehearsals, Warren Carlisle, the choreographer, and I met with Christine Baranski, and we showed her all of the dance numbers that we'd prepared. And gave her a little head start as to what we were planning on doing. And in the rehearsal process, we teach all those numbers to the ensemble and the principals as well. And then once the show is open, I have to keep the show clean. I have to make sure everyone's doing the right step, the right style, because each dance number has a different style to it.
Yes.
And if it's all performed on the same note, it doesn't give any specifics or dynamics to the number.
Yes.
And so I have to keep my eye on that and keep it fun. Everyone has to enjoy themselves, but be doing it the right way.
Yes.
So periodically we have something called a brush-up rehearsal where we all get in the studio and look at the mirror and I show different people steps and how I want it to look and make sure we're all on the same page.
Yes.
So the show stays clean, so it
Yes.
stays tight, and the same style that was taught in rehearsal, stays the same throughout the production. And when you're dealing with a long, run, this one's
Yes.
5 weeks, but a lot of times shows run 6 months, to a year or longer, and you have to keep the same excitement and the same, same style that was created
Yes.
on day one.
Yes.
So
And energy, and
that's
keeping
right.
that energy up. Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Because the change is inevitable. It's
Yes.
going to happen because we didn't film it, and it's sort of like that that game telephone or rumor, or
Yes.
if we all whisper something, by the time you get to the 20th person, it will
Yes.
have changed, and sometimes
Right.
horribly.
Yes.
But and that's what happens over a 10-day period or something like that. People
Yes.
just forget, or
Yes.
they revert to doing something. And Parker gave me a note the other day, and I was trying very hard to flick my hands the
Yes.
appropriate way. And the director came to see the performance, and I got a note from the director. And Parker stands right behind me.
Yes. So he watches.
And so I got a note from the director saying, "Harriet, for some reason at the end of It's Today, you look scared. You can have more fun there." And I thought, well, because Parker's right behind me, and he's going to call a brush-up rehearsal.
Right.
So I just think, 30 people have to come because I can't flick my wrist.
Right.
But these things do happen, and Parker's great, and he's very firm and yet gentle about, not right, got to do
Yeah.
it this way, and it does keep the show tight.
And that's Harriet's just one person. There's 30 people who each have their own little versions and little
Of this.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to make sure that they're all close and are in sync with each other.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Sure. Well, Harrison, I wanted to ask you a question because we were celebrating your 97 that you got on your Spanish exam. How on earth do you juggle school with outside activities, with family and friends, and this performance?
Well, since we're doing this in Washington, D.C., it was harder to juggle school because I wasn't able to go back to school and get work from my teachers. They had to send it.
Yes.
But normally I go to school during the day, come and do the show, but during rehearsals you have to get 3 hours of tutoring a day from On Location Education, which is the company that does it.
I see.
And so basically I just kept up my grades, and so now I'm allowed to do it again.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, all of you on some level are balancing family and friends and all that stuff. How do you do it? How do you make it work?
Gosh, it's a commitment you make, from day one. And fortunately, we have very supportive loved ones at home that let us do it.
Yes.
And I mean, I have a wife and son all the way back in Connecticut, and they're, behind me the whole way. And
Yes.
we get home when we can. We go home on our days off.
Yes.
We spend our day off traveling to go visit them, or they come visit when they can.
Yes.
But it's part of the work we do.
Part of the work.
And it's also a very sort of, I hate to say this, but a very selfish process in some ways. That in some ways it's easier to be alone when we're, and to be out of town, because there's so much to think about and there's so much to work on that that another presence might sort of hinder that in some way.
Yes.
It's, you know, it just is like you become very internal during the rehearsal process
Yes.
because you have to.
Yes.
You know, you have to just sort of tunnel vision on the goal, which is the show. And so, you know, in some ways it's, you know, and I think all of our respective spouses and partners sort of realize that level of it and our understanding of that level of it. And so,
Yes.
you know, but in some ways it's easier to be alone sometimes to go through this.
To go through.
I really have really supportive parents because not many parents would just pick up and leave and go with their kids to bring them to Washington, D.C. to do a show.
Yes.
So-
Yeah. So you got to keep those grades up so you can do it again.
Yeah, they make sure because if I weren't able to keep up my grades, then I wouldn't be able to do this type of experience again.
Gotcha.
That's great.
Gotcha. I want to come back to you, Alan, because you talked about preparing for the audition and your notion of what how the character should evolve. That was a pretty bold thing because you ran a risk there of them saying, well, I'm not sure that we like your interpretation.
Right.
Where do you get the courage and where do you get the commitment to do that for yourself?
Well, for myself, Ito, for Asian American actors, there's this like slightly negative sort of image of what this character represents,
Okay.
because he is a servant and because at least the way it was portrayed in the movie in 1958, which in some respects probably for that time period it was fine. When you look at the movie today, you know, he was slightly feminized and giggly and sort of almost like a geisha in some ways.
Okay.
Which for them at that time was probably comic.
Okay.
But to me, it's, you know, it was slightly emasculating,
Yes.
and it was a take that I couldn't do.
Yes.
And so, you know, but that also is sort of the image that I've always had of Ito, and
Right.
I think a lot of people have of that character.
Right.
And so I was actually sort of hesitant about even going to the audition.
Yes.
So I had to bring another take to it. And so when they offered me the role, I had to go back and reread the script to make sure that that other image that I had of it was not laid into the script.
Yes.
So, you know, and always go back to the words because that's the Bible.
Right.
And I did, and there's absolutely nothing offensive about this role at all.
Yes.
Absolutely, and you know, just the opposite. He's a beloved member of the family,
Yes.
of her extended family. You
Yes.
know, she relies on him completely, and you know, in sort of my vision of it, he helped raise the younger Patrick, and later on in life, Peter, who is older Patrick's son.
Yes.
So he's an invaluable member of the household.
Yes.
And so I took it from there. And I thought, okay, so how can I make this guy sort of different and yet still funny? And sort of my take on it was, so if I combined sort of the wry wit of Rosario from Will and Grace with,
Yes.
with you know, somebody sort of like, I sort of see him as this sort of samurai Toshiro Mifune character.
Yes.
So if I combine these two, what would happen?
Yes.
And that's sort of where how Ito grew out of it.
Yes.
And so, you know, well, you know, the audiences sort of, you know, tell you whether it's working or
Yes,
not.
well,
And
I think it works beautifully. Well, and you also talk about growing, about how your role grew. It seems to me this show has grown through many various versions, and I believe that you all got a chance to work with the composer, with Jerry Herman, in this production process. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that was like?
It was amazing.
How so?
Well, he's a great person. He was so nice coming into this to help us out. And when he first saw the show, he was basically when he first saw, we did a run through and he sat in on it. When he was crying and he just said this, it was just amazing.
Yes.
And it was really great to know that the person who wrote the music can come in and see something totally different from the original
Yes.
and still love it.
Terrific.
It was great. He gave us an extra artistic eye as well.
Yes.
He really stayed with us for about 2 weeks up until we opened.
Wow.
And he would watch a run through and then meet with our director and choreographer and say, well, what about just a slight change, you know? try it this way. And then 9 times out of 10, it would really be right.
Knows, yeah, he knows
Yes.
his show.
He knows.
Yes.
And then he was also able to depart from other versions of Mame and ideas he had from other versions of Mame where he thought, oh, well, I never saw it in that light.
Yes.
And that's an interesting choice. And
Yes.
so to have that support, you know, throughout the process was fantastic. It
It's
was
a
great.
similar thing to what Alan was talking about auditioning and coming in with something new, and you can't really satisfy what is a creative drive by saying what will they like, how can I get the job, and sometimes you're in a position where you have to get a job, so you are trying to figure out how do they want to see this, but it's much more entertaining and much more of an active role to take, to think, how would I want to do it? How would I, you know, what do I have to bring to this? And what was great about Jerry, to go back to that, is that he didn't come in sort of saying, how much is this going to be like the original, or like the other. Mrs. Lee, Robert E. Lee's wife, who wrote the book, came to see it, and she's seen 100 Mames, or she's seen Mame 100 times. And you know, you would think that anybody like that, or like Jerry Herman, of course they want their most beloved things to remain unbesmirched, but they want to see these children that they've had grow and become other things. And it's a wonderful way to keep it lively.
It's probably also awesome for him to see another person's perspective of the show.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, but that is not to say that it was not completely intimidating. Having him
I
in the
was going to
room.
ask.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, just the idea of Jerry Herman, it's like, you know, you're performing for the king,
When
you
you-
know,
Yes.
absolutely. And so there's that part of you that's like, oh God, oh, I hope he likes it, you know, I hope
Yeah.
he likes it,
Doesn't.
yeah.
What if
And then
he
what
doesn't?
if he
He
doesn't?
doesn't.
But
Sure.
and I have to say, oh no, I just want to say really quickly how absolutely, like, he is this enveloping warmth.
Wow.
You know, so he sat through it, and absolutely, at one point, you could just look. You looked over, and you just saw tears running down his eyes, and
gosh.
you know, you're like, oh, okay, well then, what was I intimidated about? This man
Right.
is a pussycat. and-
Right.
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 Absolutely.
Right.
I was just going to say, everyone wanted his stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Just, and it had to be perfect right then. I mean, because it's his
Sure.
work.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
And it was our, what, second or third?
It
week
was
of
their
rehearsal?
second, I think.
So it was really
very early
It
in
was
the
very
show.
early on. It was
Right.
one
Yes.
of the first run-throughs we did,
Yes.
and so you know we're all still
all really,
trying to maneuver through our the maze of our roles at the same
Yes.
time as performing for Jerry Herman. So
Yes.
it was, you know, it was a little scary, but
Well, a maze of your roles and set and costume changes.
goodness.
Because the spectacle of the show is just splendid. But I kept thinking, she only had like a second to change into that robe and into that gown, and the set is. So, would you talk a little bit about the technical side of what you do? How did you make a home out of all those sets?
Wow. Well, we sure had to do it fast because we got into tech rehearsal on stage, and the elements almost took over. You know, when we had the staircase
Yes.
revolving, it didn't always work, and you know
Yes.
we had to iron all of that out.
Sure.
In addition to all the quick changes off stage, changing costumes that.
One number it took us like, how long was it? Like 3 hours just to talk through it.
Right, you had to talk through it with your dressers off stage, and
Yes.
we're talking 12 seconds or 14 seconds of a quick change off
Yes.
stage to get back on, and
Yes.
and it's those little details that you think about when you're in rehearsal, but not until you're surrounded by the elements. That it's do it now or never, you know,
Yes.
because we had to get through tech, and then we had just a few previews before we opened,
Yes.
and it was crunch time once we got into the theater with
Sure.
with all those elements.
It's funny too about certain things that an actor remembers. And Angela Lansbury came to do the Kennedy Center honors, and she stopped by a rehearsal and said hello to everybody. And it was thrilling to see her. I mean, oh
Yes.
wow! And when she and Christine and I were talking, and Christine said, "There's that incredibly quick change," and Angela said, "Yes, you have 14 seconds. You will need 4 dressers. You have someone holding your shoes. You have some." She hasn't done it since 1986 86 or whenever
83,
when they
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's so, I mean, she knows that show
knew.
so well
Yeah.
still
Yes.
that she's saying you cannot do it with less than, I can't remember, you know, my memory is not as good as hers,
Yes.
whether she said 3 or 4, but she said that's the way that change works.
Yes.
And sure enough, you know, they were trying to do it with fewer dressers so that somebody else who has, you know, a 20-second change over here can do this.
Yes.
And that's just the way it was built. It has to be that.
Yes.
So there's this whole world
It's a
of
Sure.
scurrying people wearing blacks backstage, like
Exactly.
solving crises after crises.
And that's a show in itself.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And at
Backstage,
that
yeah.
point in the process when you're in tech and you're figuring all this out, you know, it's a very vulnerable time for an actor because you become reliant on somebody else
Yeah.
to help you, and and until you get sort of the choreography of that,
Yes.
it becomes a very scary time because really your goal is always to get back out on stage. And I think we've all been there when somebody has missed a cue and
Yes.
just the sort of the blanching and the fear
Horrifying.
involved with that.
Yeah.
But I think now
Yes.
that we've been doing it for almost, how long has it been? 2 weeks? Something like that?
3 weeks.
But now we have it down to a science.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
now,
Until things go wrong.
yeah.
Right. Right.
And then suddenly
you-
the moon doesn't go up in
Right.
the moon song, and or
Right.
my skirt falls, which I had to
Oh,
carry around my skirt for the whole.
Your war stories.
Yeah, but
Sure.
It's an incredibly ambitious
Yeah.
production, and that's part of what was so difficult about the tech. And the Kennedy Center is one of the few theaters in the country that could mount something like this. It's
Right.
terrific, and we've got this
Absolutely.
astonishing orchestra. And
Right.
But it's sort of like a Broadway production,
Yes.
and very few days to pull it all together. All these
Sure.
disparate elements, you know, just having to be perfect at once. It just doesn't happen. So.
Well, I think when people think of theater, think of music theater, they think of all the time you spend interpreting and making your own decisions. They forget that there are certain things that you have to be on the mark with every single night because 29 other people are depending on you.
Sure.
And for
Yeah.
safety, you know, if set pieces coming in, you need to be where you need to be,
Right.
so you don't get run over. And with that
Right.
staircase too,
That
it's like
stair-
Titanic
Yes.
talking in port. You know,
Absolutely.
you have to be out of the way of that piece of
That
scenery.
3-ton piece.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, in the
Yes.
plantation scene when we
Yes.
perform Mame, there's this amazing house on stage,
Yes.
and it gives us, I think we have 15 feet from the orchestra, from the edge of the stage to the house, and we
Yes.
have 15 feet to dance a big number,
Yes.
and if you're not on your mark, I mean, people can get knocked over,
And like
you
during
know.
rehearsal, we
It's
had
so tight.
a lot more space to work
Yes.
with because
Right.
we didn't have all the sets.
Right.
Yes.
And once we got on stage, it all sort of.
Sure. Because
Condenses.
in rehearsal you have things taped out on the ground. It's like this is where the staircase is, and
Right.
so often I would look down going, they are dancing through that staircase.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Problem later.
Exactly.
Sure, sure.
They're dancing on that flower box.
Absolutely.
Well, can I ask also, because one of the things that's struck me in terms of our time together is you all have so much energy. How do you keep up the energy in terms of the demands of the show and everything else? What are the things that you do personally? Do you have rituals? Do you have diets and things that you know work for you?
Absolutely. Well, we work out. I mean, a lot of us have to go to the gym to stay in shape. In addition to the physical activity of performing the show, that keeps you in shape. But you vocalize, you get lots of rest, or at least you should.
Yes.
I
That's
mean,
really
because we
important.
really need
Yes.
a good 8-9 hours, you know, of rest, because it's a very demanding show.
Absolutely.
And especially with 8 shows a week, by the weekend when we have 5 in a row, we have a Friday night, 2 Saturday, and 2 Sunday.
Wow.
It's just about getting through Sunday at that point.
Yes.
It's very taxing.
Yes.
Especially with musicals, because you are using all of the elements of yourself. You're using your voice, your movement, and if any of that is compromised, it affects. Especially in a comedy, it affects. Like last week, I had a cold, which
Yes.
affected a certain part of my voice.
Yes.
And so I couldn't lay this certain line out in the way that I knew that would get a laugh. And
Yes.
so for 3 shows, I would try something different because I didn't have that part of my voice. Crickets.
Yeah.
But right when that my voice came back, the laugh came back, and it's really interesting. And
That's
because,
really cool.
especially with comedy,
Yes.
it's so it could be a hand here instead of here. That
Yes.
means the difference between getting a laugh or not getting a laugh. And it's
Yes.
but that's sort of the fun of it for me as well, is trying to figure out that
What gets-
what is that? What
Yes.
is, because comedy is so hard, and sometimes it's the strangest thing that an audience will find funny rather than not funny.
Yes.
And you know, and we have what in rehearsal are called sort of cast laughs rather than audience laughs.
Yes.
Which you discover right when you get in front of an audience. Oh, well, that was funny to
the cast.
the cast who know the show. To these people who don't know the show,
Yes.
they don't get it.
Yeah.
So even within our rehearsal, the performing process, the first couple of weeks, I had to retool my show that I was doing in the rehearsal studio to match what the audience expectation was.
Right.
And that was
Right.
really interesting to me.
It's really so rewarding when you hear the audience laughing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just so.
And
It's,
so devastating when you
Yeah.
know that they're supposed to be and they're not. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The beginning of the show, Harriet and I ride out on a couch together, and I mean, it is, and we get to laugh the minute we hit the stage. That's
Yes.
just part of our thing, and
Yes.
that feeds my whole show. I mean, starting every single night, getting to roll out with Harriet Harris.
Yes.
I mean, come on. And we're just, I mean, I'm serious. And then, and just to be able to hear the music and be laughing at, I mean,
Yeah.
that,
Yes.
we're lucky. I mean, I love that moment because it really picks me up. And no matter where I am, I'm focused and it gives me the energy to
Yes.
do the show.
Well, it is for me as well. Talking about Harriet, to be able to be, yes, sorry about that, but to be backstage and watch her work in a scene,
Yes.
because it's always slightly different every night. It's
Yes.
nothing is sort of set in stone, and
Yes.
it's amazing to watch that process of a comedy actor or just an actor,
Yes.
but somebody who does comedy as well as Harriet does.
Yes.
Go through again the maze of the performance.
Yes.
It really is fascinating, and it's such a learning experience to watch other really great actors go through this, because comedy is very hard.
Very hard.
You
Very
know.
hard. Well, how aware are you of what the audience is experiencing when you're on stage? You've got the technical things to think about. You've got your roles to think about. You got to be on your mark. And how aware are you actually of what the audience is feeling?
Pretty aware.
Pretty darn aware. Absolutely.
they express themselves.
I think in a comedy you're very aware,
Okay.
because one of the problems with comedy, I think, is that if they're not laughing, you're not telling the story. It's not that you're not funny.
Right.
Yes.
So if they're not laughing, it does mean, you think, did I hit that line too hard? It's like Mame's song, did he need a stronger hand?
Yes.
Did I hit the line too hard? Is my attack off? Was I under? And then after you go through all these things of, was it me?
Yes.
Then you think, no, something's wrong. And then you think it's something up there that wasn't there before, and it's part of like Parker's brush-up rehearsal.
Yes.
Our director has to come in and watch the things and go, there's a whole scene going on
Right.
upstage
That wasn't
above the
happening
scene
a
that's
week
actually
ago.
the story.
Yes.
So the laughs are really informative in terms of that, yes, they're still with it. They get that that's, and it's always about Mame's story or about the relationship with her friends, or where her friends are either failing her or helping her, but all the humor really does come from who these people are in Mame's life.
Yes.
So you're always trying to tell that story.
Yes.
And if they are laughing, that story is getting told.
Yes.
If there's a laugh that has nothing to do with dialogue or behavior that's directed about this, then it's, it's funny, but it's not the story. And then you're sort of like in the realm of not good sitcoms, as
Yeah.
opposed to a good sitcom that's story and character driven, where it's just like, oh, that's cute,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
oh, shake your head and roll your eyes, and oh, that always gets a laugh. It's
Yes.
just
Right.
it really is about that. And a lot of actors, not in our cast,
Yes.
but a lot of actors will do anything in order to get a laugh, and they forget that what we're really trying to do is communicate this story.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it hard to do comedy, when not everybody has the same idea
Yes.
of, it's not getting laughs, it's a comedy because this is a wonderfully funny story.
Right.
Yes.
And tell the story.
Well, the other thing that was very clear is that you all seem to be having fun with each other. And it's pretty transparent when you see a show where people are doing all the behavior, but inside, you know, I can't wait to get away from so-and-so or so-and-so. But it seems as if you all genuinely enjoy watching each other's artistry when you're on stage.
Well, and I think people are enjoying, you know, it is also that's the story. People love to be around Mame. People in her life adore her and come to her, and the relationship that Vera and Mame have in this version, I don't know about others, but it's, I love Mame so much that I can actually put my ego aside so that she can be the star.
Yeah.
And the only problem really does happen when I invite her back into my world because she needs help, and she takes all the focus, and she messes up my my opening night, and that is unforgivable because she should understand my world. I'm the star. Don't mess it up. Don't. But that, so it is. It's just like the joy of Mame's company and what she brings out of. So it is a really. It's a really fun show to do.
Yeah,
Everybody
I love
has, I think,
the
a
entire. I get
relationship
to
with
do a tango. That I have so much
Yes.
fun doing that.
Yes.
Well, and
every night.
honestly, it seems like, at least in my past experience, it's sort of the attitude of the stars that dictate a cast. And Christine and Harriet and Emily are all so open and loving and no ego and all about the work and being part of an ensemble that it really makes it a joy to be on stage and to want to come to work every day. And they've been like that throughout the whole process. And to me, that's a gift because that doesn't happen a lot. And so I think that for all of us, this whole experience has been one of complete joy. And the fact that Mame is such a joyous musical to begin with, it's help feeds that, absolutely.
And everyone's so wonderful in it. Everybody is terrific at their job.
Everybody
And
backstage.
people, you know, and everybody can do something that the other really thinks, gosh, I know I can do this, but I wish I could do that too. But they're here to do that, you know, and they're doing it so well. So it really is just, the very first day of rehearsal, we all looked around and went, this is a great group. This is going to be really fun to.
Well, you've used certain kinds of language a couple of times, and I think the misconception is when people do musicals is that there's the star, and there are certain sort of stereotypes about people in musical theater. You know, the star gets this, and this is a person who's the dictator and that. And you keep talking about openness and communication amongst all of you and being sensitive to other people, and that's kind of a side of the business that we don't often see.
Well, because sometimes, you know, there are instances where the star is the star, and there's a separation, absolutely. Or there's this, or the creative staff is a creative staff that is a dictatorial creative staff. Whereas this has been a collaborative process all around. We've been very lucky with our director, our choreographer, and a musical director, and we've been lucky with our stars. So it has created an environment, really a great environment to create. Without barriers and without, you know, so it's been a really wonderful experience, and that doesn't happen every time.
And everyone's given a voice. Everyone is given, even the ensemble member on the left, I mean, is someone specific to the mix. And everyone's given an opportunity to share, you know, their voice, their opinion, or it's been an open process.
My favorite thing that we did was, I think it was the second or the third day of rehearsal for the opening number. Everybody had to write, we're given a character, and you had to pick a word that described that character. And talk about your character, and, you know, in this situation of Mame's first party. And it really, what it did for all of us was it got us to know everybody a little bit better. And it got people thinking about a character-driven, because sometimes when you're in an ensemble, the thing is, oh, okay, you're the ensemble, so just stand over here and you do this move here, and that's it. But it really gave everybody a voice and an individual personality, which helped feed that opening scene. And that's why I think the show kicks off so well, is because of that.
It really brought us together as a cast.
Yeah, absolutely.
That whole.
Absolutely. It makes it a meatier production. You know, gives it so much more dimension.
Where do you go from here, each of you, when Mame closes?
Wow.
I'm off to summer camp.
Off to summer camp. And I think, ironically, where's your first stop in summer camp?
DC.
Let's
go to New
the
York
production
and
of
back to
Mame
DC.
at summer camp.
Yeah.
You just get a chance to relax in D.C. instead of
Go
working
see all
in
the
D.C.
fabulous sights here.
Nice, nice. What about the rest of you? Do you know, or are you?
Well, I'm going to work on a cruise for a week. Rosie O'Donnell has a cruise ship, and she invites Broadway performers to come on and to help be part of the entertainment for this cruise line. And so I'm going to be a part of that for a week, and then back to New York for myself.
Neat.
I get to go home and
Nice.
work out in the yard and
Nice.
be a dad. And my son starts summer camp soon, so I'll be home for that, and
Yes.
a couple potential performance gigs out there. You know,
Nice.
so we just move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
go back to LA, and I'm actually extremely homesick because since I live in LA, there was no ever going home on the day off. So I'll go
Yes,
home, and then I'll start, doing TV and film work again, and I won't be breaking into song quite so much, I don't think. So, but that'll be very nice to go home.
Yes.
It's been it continues to be a wonderful job, but it'll be very good to go
Good to
home.
go home. If there was one thing you would tell an aspiring performer in terms of advice, what do you think you would tell somebody who really wants to do what the four of you do?
To persevere. There is so much rejection in this line of work.
Yes.
But if you stay focused and you believe in yourself and you're optimistic that the right job will come along, and that you really, if you want it bad enough and you do the homework, you can do whatever you want. I mean, there are a lot of people that say no, you can't, but you have to say yes, I can. And whether it's with this director or that director, you can make a happy living, a career in this line of work if you just stay focused on the positive and keep keep working hard.
Yeah, I always my saying is just, if you don't get it, forget it, because you really can't dwell on stuff. If you don't get something, you just have to go on with your life. You can't think about, oh, I wish I got that, because there's more to come. And
Nice.
so
I think there should be T-shirts. If you don't get it, forget it. That's a
That's great,
wonderful,
Harriet.
wonderful,
That's it.
wonderful line.
That's awesome.
Advice?
I think really and truly, and I hope this isn't a downer, if you don't want it more than anything, don't pursue it.
Okay.
If you don't want to be an actor, it's like being a parent. If you don't want to have a child more than you want to do anything else with your life, don't do it.
Yes.
So, because you really do, like Parker was talking about, you do get buffeted around, and once you're, I am going to get a T-shirt that says that, but once you're out on your own and you really do have to pay the bills, and you have to do that in the warm, nurturing environment that, Harrison's parents are providing, it's not there, then you really you get knocked around a lot. And
Yes.
it is very hard to, think, oh God, I've got $400 left, and what am I going to do? So but you just have to persevere, like Parker says, and think, what do I have to bring to this? And stop looking at your deficiencies. Work on them, but stop focusing on them, and really work on your skills. Really make sure that you're the best actor or singer or dancer you can be.
Yes.
Because if you do it in half measures, I just think it just leads to an enormous amount of disappointment.
Yes.
like Mame says,
Yes.
just live, live, live.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would say, along with that if you have a skill, but work on the deficiencies as well. Take some dance classes if you don't feel like you can move. Work on your voice. Go to a singing teacher, because it all comes in handy. You never know where that job's going to come from, and you may be, so you have to be proficient in everything in this business because you never know what skill you're going,
Yes.
you never know when you're going to have to juggle. So you
Yes.
might as well learn how to juggle just in case. It's always there. So you're never intimidated by anything, because fear is the one thing that will just, will attack your confidence, and and it shows.
Yes.
So as prepared as you can be.
Yes.
And I think that has changed over the years. My agent came to see something that I did in California, and it was a very, like a 2-week musical that I did. And he had done On the Town many, many, many years ago and had played a role in that. And he said, in my day, when we did On the Town, there were singers and there were dancers.
Yes.
And the singers stood over the side, and then the dancers would dance. And things have changed so much now.
Yes.
And one of the things that's remarkable about our cast is the singers dance, the dancers. And it took days to really figure out, watching, oh, that person really is a singer. Because that person's leg goes only this high, and this is there's something that eventually you just thought, oh no, and she's hitting that C sharp.
Wow.
That's, she's got to be. But it has become sort of something, it's sort of like athletes cross training or something.
Right.
Yes.
It has become something that people really realize it's so hard to get hired. You have to have a lot of
And it's
a lot
just
of
the
skills.
economics of the business now.
Right.
Casts are smaller, so people have to multitask and do more. And so you have to be able to,
do it all.
you have
Work
to
on
be
your
able to do it
skills.
all.
Yeah. Well, I know this creates a lot of panic, particularly in young people, this idea of the triple threat. Sort of how do you balance that drive to be a triple threat with live, live, live?
Oh, well, you're going to have to spend a lot of time working on your craft. That's, I mean, you can't, some people can go to the south of France and, paint for a while, and
Yes.
but it's not necessarily going to help you with auditions in the fall.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to, you figure out what kind of effort you want to put into it.
And for the right person, doing all of that is live, live, live.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You make
Yeah.
sacrifices. I mean,
Yes.
I went to performing arts high school and had the time of my life because that's what I wanted to do when
Yes.
I was older. But I
Yes.
was sacrificing being on the basketball team. I was
Yes.
sacrificing, having a nice campus.
Yes.
It was, I knew what I wanted, and
Right.
and so, that's what I chose to do. And you can never get enough education. You can never take enough classes.
Yes.
You have to keep, no matter how old you get, you have to work on your craft.
Yes.
And it's worth the hard work,
Yes.
We do it because we
Oh,
love it.
myself.
Yes. Last question. If you could play any role at all, what's the role you're dying to play? Or what's the show you're dying to do?
I know what I want to do.
Go ahead.
Go
Yeah.
do it.
I want to play Amanda in the Glass Menagerie.
Wow.
That's no singing, no dancing.
Yes. Yes.
But a
And
darn
very
good
little
story.
comedy.
Oh no, she's very funny. That's a funny show. I really
Wow.
think Tennessee Williams is an incredibly funny writer.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't. I mean, a lot of times it's not done that way. But she's really funny. Blanche
I'd love
Dubois
to
is really
see
funny. But
That would be
I mean,
great.
it's there. I mean, all those scenes where she's driving her son crazy.
That's
Those are funny.
that's true.
Not to him.
Not to him.
I think whatever role that I can do, I want to do. I don't really have anything in particular that I would really want to do, but just whatever comes, I just love a challenge.
Yes. Yeah. That's great. That's great.
I want to be Harold Hill in The Music Man.
Oh,
And you will.
I
Someday.
one day. I'd love to. I love the song
Nice.
Trouble. Oh, we got trouble, my friend.
Nice.
It's a fun role,
Yes.
and he's a con artist, and that's fun.
Fun.
That's funny. And I think if I had to choose one right now, it would be Javert in Les Mis.
Nice.
Because that was one of the first shows that I saw when I was just starting into the business, and I'm like, I want to be in that show so bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's definitely a part that I know I could sing vocally, and that I think they would say I'm too short or too old, but that's we're talking about dream
That's
roles.
Sure. And we got to put it out there.
Yeah,
to make it
Yeah,
happen.
that's right. You do.
What's the biggest misconception people have about performing in a musical and have about music theater performers?
That it's not real acting. That it's not, as serious as a play. When in fact, the acting has to be so real and so focused that when one breaks into song, it's the emotion of, I can't express it, I have to sing. It's such a heightened awareness that, I mean, and you have to act through the songs. While you're dancing, you have to tell a story through dance.
Yes.
So you're acting while you're dancing. It's very colorful, and a lot of people thinking, oh, well, musical theater, it's fluff, or it's just, you know.
Yes.
That's a misconception I hear all the time.
And it's actually one of the hardest things to sort of pull off well.
Right. Yes.
Absolutely, because
Yes.
you can just, because it's right there, you can see whether somebody is skilled at it or not, like that, you know.
Yes.
And like we were saying about triple threats, you have to, you know, there are times when you have to be all three of those.
Yes.
And, you know, and if you are lacking in one or all of those, it's painfully obvious very quickly.
Yes. Yes.
Unless you're lit well.
Unless you're lit very.
And then it's not quite so obvious.
See, and Harriet always does this, but she's brilliant. She's a brilliant singer and a brilliant mover as well.
Just no
So
one's ever seen it.
Yes.
I see it every night.
exactly.
At home, it's marvelous.
Well, it struck me in watching your performance, because a lot of your character's life is spent hungover or about to be hungover, and it struck me with what precision you're able to play complete abandon.
Oh, well, it's because I'm such a restrained person off stage. The only time I ever get to be abandoned is when I'm
On stage.
Yeah, because it's rehearsed
Yes.
abandonment.
Yes.
But her physical comedy is so brilliant and
Yes.
so subtle
Yes.
that, you know, that in itself is a lesson in acting, just watching that. I
Yes.
get to watch it off stage every night, so
Yes.
I know exactly from whence I speak. It's really, she's brilliant.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Well, if I'd known we were going to spend so much time talking about me, I would have put on more makeup. Couldn't she have curled her hair? Crying out loud.
Even watching Harrison sing My Best Girl, I mean, he is just simply telling the story when he sings
Yes.
to Mame, and
Yes.
it's so believable. He's not overacting. He's
Yes.
not lost in the song. He is,
Yes.
you know, doing a monologue.
Yes.
He's communicating to her.
Yes.
And it's so important that we stay focused on that as performers, because you can't get carried away.
Yes. Well, I think that's something outstanding about this production is we've all seen musicals where you can see the performer performing. Well, thank all of you so much. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Kennedy Center Performing Arts Series. I'd like to thank the artists who've taken time to be here and share with us. I'd also like to give a special thank you to the George Washington University School of Media and Public Affairs for hosting us today. Remember, if you'd like more information about this program, you may contact us by using the email address on the screen. We'd love to hear from you and answer your questions.